It's a great day to be alive. No sun still shining when I close my eyes. Listen, hard times in the neighborhood, but why can every day be just as good?
Welcome back to Once Upon a Tiny Farm. My name's Drew. In today's video, I want to talk about 3 underrated tools that I actually think I forgot to mention in one of my last videos where I talked about 5 farm tools that I couldn't market garden without. In this video, I'm going to talk about 3 more tools that I use all the time that makes my no-till market garden work. So stick around and I'll tell you what those 3 tools are. So the first tool I want to talk about is my Propane Torch. These rows here, 1, 2, 3, I just seeded these 2, and after I put down the compost, I did a quick run with the torch all the way down to kill any weed seeds that may have been in that compost. And after I did that, I direct seeded another thing of my lettuce mix, and I did some beet greens right here. And that, I think, I didn't always have that propane torch, but it's gonna be a game changer for me. Another thing I've been using the propane torch for is well, it's really a one-time use, but in my black weed fabric, landscape fabric, I've been using the propane torch to put holes in the fabric in order to create a nice little hole for me to plant my transplants into. So that worked out really nice. It's not something that I'll have to do all the time once I do it, but when you're cutting, I've done it before where I used a landscape fabric and I did it by hand with a knife and scissors to just cut through all these holes, and it took a really long time, and you have to bend down a really long time. But with the propane torch, you don't have to do that. You could stand up, just pop little quick holes, and you're done. So propane torch, wish I had that last year when I started everything. Might have made my life a lot easier. Another tool that I use all the time on my farm is it's called a silage tarp. It's just a thick black tarp that I use to, when my beds are done and I've cropped out, taken out as much of the debris as I can from the previous crop, I will cover that row with a black thick tarp and leave it there, depending on how hot or not hot it is at whatever time of the year it is. It will do something called occultation. It uses the heat from the sun, basically burns and cooks everything that's beneath the tarp. And then around this time of year, late July, it could just be a week. If you cover a row with a tarp, everything will be done, and you could just rake out that debris and then plant your next crop right into it. And I do that all the time on my farm. I also use the tarps to help me germinate my lettuce rows. I did a video on that if you want to check that out. I direct seed my lettuce, and then I water it really good, and then I'll cover that row with a tarp to encourage those seeds to germinate. But when it's really hot, you need to make sure that you're checking that the soil is staying moist, and if it's not, you're going to have to water that every so often before you cover it back up. And then once you see those carrot seeds germinate, you remove that tarp and just let it grow. But the black tarp helps those seeds germinate and hold in that moisture. So it serves a couple of purposes here on the farm. And the last tool that I want to mention for this video is a weed whacker. And I use this all the time. Everybody probably has a weed whacker. If you want to do this kind of farming in your backyard, the way I use the weed whacker, it works perfectly for the small leafy green veggies that I have in the ground, things like your kales, arugula, loose leaf lettuce. When that row is done, you could simply come through with the weed whacker right down as close to the soil level as you can and just get it as low as possible so it won't regrow anymore. And then you use the weed whacker, just gets it done really fast. You don't even really have to bend over at all. And then when you do that, you could just, once you're done cutting up the previous crop debris, you can cover it with a silage tarp like I was just talking about. And in a week or two, all that debris will be gone. It'll just be brown and cooked, and you can add some more compost on top a little bit, rake it nice and smooth, and then plant whatever you want to plant next. And I do that constantly on my farm because my farm is such a small size. I need to keep the amount of beds that I have. I need to keep something growing. Something always needs to be being planted constantly to get the most use out of my small spaces. So that's one way that I do that, and the weed whacker helps me be very efficient at doing that. And it saves my back and my body a lot. There's some things that you still do have to bend over and cut out of the ground, and I am I try to eliminate as much soil disturbance as possible. So things like my lettuce heads, my Salanova lettuce that I put in my salad mixes, when those are done, after I get 2 cuts from them, I will come just below the soil surface with a sharp knife, and I will cut the stem of that right below the soil surface, and then you don't even see it anymore. And what happens is that the rest of that root mass that is underground becomes worm food, and you're basically keeping that in the ground to decompose. The worms and other whatever, it eats that, and it becomes food for your soil. And then you could just add a few handfuls of compost on top and plant some more things directly into it. So that's how I make my no-till garden work here. All right, and that's going to wrap up this video on 3 underrated tools that I use all the time in my no-till garden. And if you found this video helpful in any way, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. I'd really appreciate it. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.